When I talk about my mother, I get emotional for a, for a very good reason.
And that's Mr. Milton Kleinberg. You know, he was just a young boy, 8 years old, when, as you just heard, the Nazi army came and marched his family out of their house. His mom was pregnant at the time, and he and his brother were whisked off with his mom into those boxcars with the family. Milton, tell us a little bit more about your mom. What kind of woman was she?
You were right when you said that. I get emotional when I think and talk about my mother. In many sense, she was a woman of valor, in the biblical sense. There wasn't anything that she wouldn't do to keep her children alive. The journey we were in Arkhangelsk, in the most eastern part, north and most eastern part of the Soviet Union by the Finnish border. And from there we were transferred to Samarkand, Uzbekistan in Central Asia. That's a 4,500-mile journey. It usually takes about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks on a normal Trans-Siberian line. But we were traveling at the heat of battle, which wasn't normal. So those 2 to 3 weeks lasted a horrific 3 months. There's people would really have to get the book to hear the whole story. But I can tell you one incident that would probably sum it up to a great extent. We were given by the Russians passports and ration cards, bread. That entitled a person to 550 grams of bread, which is about a pound. It was barely to keep soul and body together, but without that bread, death was a certainty. That's why the book is called Bread or Death. But about halfway through the trip, my father went out to barter to get us some more food to supplement those ration cards, and he never came back on the train. So right in that particular spot, we were stranded on the train, the 5 of us. My mother was nursing Velvo, which was my youngest brother. I was responsible for taking care of Herschel, and father was, of course, responsible to get us some food at train stop. But he was gone. But to make the whole situation worse, is he took with him the ration cards, the passports, and everything else. So we were stranded, depending entirely on the people on the train. There were 35 people on the train, men, women, and children, and they barely had enough to keep their own souls together. So it was a very difficult situation. She even tried to become a beggar at one time, and she was a very proud woman. She tried to make herself pitiful at the train stops, and she had the baby in her arm with a blanket over her, and we were holding out to her skirts, and she did it until a woman says, "You pitiful creature," and she changed. She said, "I'm not a pitiful creature," and went back to the train, and she didn't do it. But one event on the train that helped us, a Polish woman who also had very bad luck after she left Poland, after she was deported. Her husband died in Arkhangelsk. Her son, who was a friend of mine, died in an accident under the train. She had befriended mother because mother took care of her baby while she was trying to deal with her son's death. Now she lost her last baby to typhoid and malnutrition. She came over to my mother, and just to thank her for her kindness during those terrible, as she called, nights and days. And she said, "Here." She gave her passport and ration cards, and she says, "Now you are me. The Russians will not be able to tell us apart." And then, clutching her dead baby, Uh, she opened up the sliding door of the train. Our train was coming around the bend, and another train was coming from the opposite direction. And before anybody could react, she jumped. And that unhinged everybody in the train. And most of us on the train have seen deaths, but this one event really unhinged everybody. But
Milton, tell us how you survived. Yes. How did you eventually make it to the United States when you were, I think, all of 14 years old?
Yes, I was an old 14 years old. I was never a child, you know. Well, in 1951, we were in DP camp, displaced persons camp in Germany, and they were liquidating the displaced persons camp, the DP camps. So we were, of course, we were signed up to go to Israel. At that time, Israel was in war with the Arabs, so there wasn't room. Then we were trying to get to Australia. We got over to the Australian side, and they didn't have any room either. So we landed passage on the General R.M. Blatchford. And 14 days later, on May 14, we came to the New York Harbor. And from there, we traveled to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and a happy life.
And a blessed life as well, as right now we're looking at a picture of your entire family. Milton, we have to wrap this up, but I want to say it's been an honor to speak with you and an honor to know you briefly via the telephone. Thank you for sharing your incredible story.
And again,
the book is called Bread or Death by Milton Kleinberg. And we will be back with more NTV's Good Life in just a moment. Friends, stay right where you are.